Greetings, salutations, and welcome to Sportslook, the sports television program for the high plains of West Texas and eastern New Mexico. I'm your host, Doc Elder, and to prove that Led Zeppelin knew what they were talking about in the song Stairway to Heaven when they said, you know, sometimes words have two meanings, we're going to talk football, American style, with Mike Walden and Noah Schweitzer. We're going to talk football, rest of the world style, with John Friedel, Gabriel Perez, and Ross Dalton. We'll have Brandon and Ryan do a high school spotlight. I'll finish up with an overtime, but as always, I'll start out with an Eastern recap. Rough weekend for Greyhound women's soccer as they dropped 2 conference matches on the road. Rough weekend for Greyhound volleyball as they dropped 2 conference matches on the road. Great weekend for Greyhound women's cross country. Not only did they win the LSC preview meet in Canyon, Texas, but Mercy Rodage was the meet champion. Well, that has been your Eastern recap, so what we'll do is we'll clear the set and I'll bring in John Friedel, Gabriel Perez, and Ross Dalton from Greyhound Soccer right now. Welcome back to Sportslook, and we bring to the set of Sportslook John Friedel, the head coach of Greyhound Soccer from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, Gabriel Perez, a midfielder from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, and Ross Dalton, the goalkeeper from Liverpool, England. Gentlemen, you have proven this is truly the world sport.
Thanks for having us.
Well, Coach, we'll start out with you. You took over a program that was pretty much in disarray last year. Right now, I mean, you got off to a great start, 8-6-2 after your first 16 matches of the season. What accounts for the quick turnaround?
I just think we got the right people in. You know, we kept the right people in the program that we needed to keep, and then we complemented those guys with guys that had the right mentality and the right talent.
Well, Gabriel, we'll turn to you. You had actually played for Coach Friedel at Indian Hills Community College in beautiful Ottumwa, Iowa, and then you come to equally beautiful Portales, New Mexico to play for him. What was it that got you to Ottumwa to begin with? What kept you with Coach Friedel?
Since we've been together, I've been learning everything in the U.S. with him, and we are very close about that, just not about the field, but out the field as well. And I just could say that it's been a very nice experience since Ottumwa and he in Portales as well. So I just have to be grateful about that.
Very good. And Ross, I'll ask you the same question. What was that got you to Ottumwa? What was the selling point for Coach Friedel to bring you to the States to begin with and kept you in the States to go to school here?
Well, when I got there last year, I didn't know what to expect really, but we had a great season last season, and as soon as I found out that Coach got the job to transfer and he asked me to go, there was no doubt about it really. And I think being here, I've enjoyed the season again up to now, and I think we've got a real special group that we can do something really good.
Let me ask you, what is the big difference that you can see between European style, as you would say over there, football and the soccer that you played here in the United States? Is there a big difference, or is it pretty much still the same game?
I think in England, it's always, for years, it's been the biggest sport. So when you come over to the US, there's other sports like the American football, basketball, so there's more sports for people to watch, but I think since I've been especially, I've learned that soccer's grew over in America quite a lot and more people are starting to watch, and with internationals like us coming over, it's like a good experience for us and we're really enjoying it.
It's appropriate, Gabriel, that we have you on tonight because this is the 78th birthday of Pele, one of the few individuals in the history of sport that can go by one name and everybody knows. I would assume that soccer is still probably the big sport in Brazil.
Yeah, of course, soccer is the biggest sport in Brazil. Yeah, we call Brazil as the soccer country because it's the sport that we love. Now, as in England, it's the first one. Everybody loves soccer, and the difference about soccer in America and soccer in Brazil is pretty same that what Roy said. And I just could say that sometimes he is more about physical stuff like that, and Brazil is more about technical. But I got used to that, and I'm fine with that as well.
Very good. Coach, looking at your record, the one thing that really impressed me is looking at the first 16 matches that you played, 8-6-2, which is a vast improvement over last year. Mm-hmm. You guys are 6-1 in home matches. What's the big deal about playing in Portales for your crew?
I think when you get to this level, it's hard to play on the road for anybody. So you really got to focus when you're at home and make sure you make those games count and make those games difficult for your road opponent. That was a goal we set out at the start of the season, was to be unbeaten at home. Unfortunately, we let one game get away from us against Rogers State, but beyond that, that's something these guys are taking to heart, is to make our home our fortress. So.
And I mean, obviously, as Gabriel and Ross pointed out, I mean, it's a little bit of an adjustment where they come from a country where soccer is the major sport. But you get a lot of support. I mean, I've been to a couple of your matches, and there's a pretty good contingent of people that come out and watch your home matches.
Yeah, and we got a great facility. Like you said, we get great support from the administration, from the campus. So it's a great place to play.
Gabriel, I had a chance to actually watch your first scrimmage. You had scrimmaged against Western Texas Community College, and they had gotten the better of you. And then I actually saw your first match, and you got a W in that match. What was the how fast was the turnaround, and what accounted for the turnaround from that first exhibition match to your first victory?
So I think the first game was something that I could say that's normal. Was the beginning of the program, as everybody was knowing each other. And so I think that loss to Western Texas was something that was just to learn now and then keep improving, keep working hard. And then that's what happened. The next game, we got the win, and then we just keep increasing the competition.
And Ross, let me ask you, in terms of the season, at what point did you recognize how good this team could be?
I think it wasn't until we played against, thinking back, it was against Rogers State, the actual game that we lost at home. That night we played really well, and it was funny enough that was the game that we lost, because I think we totally outplayed them and we played really good. It was just unfortunate that we lost. And then after that, I mean, I think we all know as a team, after that game, we can compete with any team in this conference, and I believe in the country on our day we play some really good soccer. And I mean, it's just about getting that consistent 90-minute performance in, which is what we're growing towards, and we've been doing so.
Ross, you impressed me as far too modest a young man to mention it yourself, so I'll mention it for you. You were the Lone Star Conference Defensive Player of the Week. What has made you the great goalkeeper that you are?
I mean, I think I'd have to go back to from where it started. I've been fortunate enough to be at a few clubs in England with some really good coaches, and throughout growing up, I learned a lot of experienced people. So, and then coming over with coach, I believe the style of play that I play as a goalkeeper suits him perfectly, and I enjoy playing it for him.
Gabriel, let me ask you the question. If you were to do a scouting report on you, if you were another coach saying, okay, this is what we can expect from Gabriel Perez, how do you think other coaches would describe you as a player?
I think a player that like to play with the ball all the time. I like to play a beautiful football, always keeping the ball. And I could be even a technical, I was kind of fast player as well. And I always want to help the team, and I was fighting for my teammates on the pitch.
Coach, when you recruit players like Gabriel and like Ross, is there a different expectation for each position on the field? Or if you had to say there's one characteristic you want all of your players to have, what would that characteristic be?
I mean, it's hard to put, your finger on just one, but I think the common thing, if you look at all the players that we have, regardless of whether they're from a foreign country or if they're from the United States, they're all going to be technical players. Because to play our style, you're going to have that. And then the other thing we look for is guys that have the mentality to want to be great. And I think if you look across our roster right now, that's guys that we're full of. And We talk about that a lot in the recruiting process. Like, you've got to be open-minded. Good is not good enough. So there's days you're going to have a good performance and coach is still going to come to you and say, hey, you can be better. Don't accept that. And sometimes that's hard for a young man to hear. You know, you've just had a good game and somebody's telling you that's not good enough. So you've got to, have that mentality that you want to be great.
Well, Gabriel, you have not been here in Portales, New Mexico for very long, but the longer you stay here, the more you'll learn that West Texas A&M is the bitter arch rival of Eastern New Mexico University, and you guys actually play them Saturday at home. So I'm sure you'd encourage people to come out and watch you guys.
Yeah, we are very ready to this game. We're looking for this match like so bad, and we know that this game is very important, not only for the rivalry, but also for the playoff game. And we know that we can win this game and host the playoffs at home. So that's something very nice to us. So even the rivalry and this playoff, we're gonna go to the game ready and play some good football and do what we used to do and get this win.
Ross, I may never get a chance to have you on Sportslook again, so I got to ask you a question. You're from Liverpool.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the Beatles came from. Yeah. Favorite Beatle?
John Lennon.
John Lennon, there you go. Good answer. You'll go far in life, young man. That would be my choice as well. Well, Coach, let's do some specifics. We talked about the fact, big rivalry match against WT on Saturday. When will the match start?
Match starts on Saturday, 1 p.m. It's actually senior day, so we'll be honoring our seniors before the match starts. But it should be a close game. We've played them once this season already. Tied them. They're a nationally ranked opponent. It's as good a time as ever to get our win against them.
Well, guys and Coach, thank you so much for being our guest. Best of luck, and go Greyhounds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, that is going to wrap up our first interview segment. So what we'll do is we'll clear this out and we'll queue up a high school spotlight segment right now.
Hello and welcome back to High School Spotlight. I'm Brendan Warren.
And I'm Ryan Schrader.
Last weekend, we traveled down to Elida for an afternoon game between the Tigers and the Eagles. Let's get to some highlights. Running out to start this one off, we have the Elida Tigers coming in with a 7-1 record, looking to stay in control of their district.
Here's Hondo Valley coming in with a 3-5 record on the season, looking to clinch a spot in the playoffs.
We have the Tigers in the shotgun, faking one way and handing off the other once again, but this time it's a pass from the running back deep down the middle to a wide open receiver who outruns the safety and jogs into the end zone for a touchdown, making it 12-0, Elida on top.
Once again, here's the Eagles. Rodriguez takes a snap and pitches it to Romero. Romero rolls out to his right to avoid getting sacked. He'll look downfield and air it out to his center, Joseph Lucero, on the right side. Lucero breaks a tackle and then takes off towards the end zone. This makes the score 12-6 with Elida leading with 3:20 left in the first quarter. The Tigers with the ball, they'll decide to pass. The QB is looking through his options and he decides to send it over the middle to number 16. He'll weave his way through the group of defenders and he'll make his way into the end zone for another Tiger touchdown. The Eagles with the ball again, they'll take the snap and pitch it back to Porfirio Romero. He'll roll out to his right and decide to keep it going down the sideline. He'll make his way all the way down to the end zone for the second Eagle touchdown of the game, making the score 20-12 Tigers.
In the shotgun, Elida hands it off to the right side. The running back hits the edge and takes off. Nobody able to catch him there, so he walks in for the score.
Tigers with the ball in the red zone again. They'll decide to pitch it out to Wesley Poling. He'll take it all the way out to the left sideline with a monster block from number 16. He'll walk into the end zone and make the score 40-12 Tigers. The Eagles still with the ball, pitch it back to Romero. He'll look downfield and air it out, connecting with Tommy Lucero in the end zone for the third Eagle touchdown of the half. This makes the score 40-20 with 6:53 left in the second quarter. The Eagles are in the red zone with the clock ticking. They'll decide to snap it directly to Romero this time. He'll immediately get it out to Fabian Prudencio for the screen, and he'll take it the rest of the way for the Eagle touchdown, taking us to the half with the score 40-26, and due to time constraints, we did not get the rest of the game, but the final score was 74-44.
Thanks for watching High School Spotlight.
Before we send you back to Doc, Make sure you like our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more updates, photos, and highlights.
Once again, I'm Brandon Warren.
And I'm Ryan Trader.
And we'll see you next time.
Welcome back to Sportslook, and thanks to Brandon and Ryan for that high school spotlight. And I can guarantee there would be no such offensive shenanigans as we saw from Elida and Honda if my next two guests were involved, because we've got the defensive coordinator of Greyhound football, Mike Walden. We've got the Lone Star Conference Defensive Player of the Week, Noah Schweitzer. And gentlemen, welcome to Sportslook.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Well, Mike, you and I go back a few years. We've seen a few Lone Star Conference games. We've seen a few wagon wheel games. I've never seen one team dominate like you guys did on Saturday.
Yeah, that's a lot of credit to our kids. And my wife and I were counting up. I think that was my 12th wagon wheel game. And it was just as exciting as it was the first time I was in it. And a lot of credit to our older kids that, got some of our new faces on board and indoctrinated about the importance of the game and the emotion that goes into it. And our kids did a really good job of taking the fight out of WT when momentum had a chance to switch. Our kids really did a good job.
Well, Noah, as it turns out, you actually also have an association with the wagon wheel game, but a little bit different. Mike's association was as a Greyhound player. And you actually were a WT buff to begin your career.
Yes, sir, I was. And it was a personal game for me, but it was a big game for the program and for the university, and that was what was most important. And I was glad we got to pull out the win.
Well, obviously, when you were coming out of high school at El Dorado, highly regarded player. I mean, a lot of schools wanted you, and it basically came down to WT. But we're certainly glad you made the decision to come here to Eastern.
Yes, sir, I am too. And I wish it would have been that way in the beginning, but I'm glad I'm here now.
Well, Noah, what was it that got you here? Was it the defensive scheme that we were going to be running, or the school in general, or a combination of both?
I have a really good relationship with Coach Lee, and there was a coaching change. I was recruited by Coach Nesbitt out in West Texas, and with the new coaching change, there were some things going on over there, and contacted Coach Kelly Lee, and he was happy to have me over here, and I was happy to come.
Well, Mike, we had you on earlier in the season, and to be honest, that was a point in time when you were still searching for your Greyhound defensive identity. You clearly have found it. What's been the big, or have there been a number of factors that have accounted for how proficient you've become defensively?
Well, I think you hit it on the head. We found kind of what we were good at and developed somewhat of an identity, and that's still always going to be a work in progress and until our kids get, probably a year under their belt. But I think we found, what we got good at, and we just kept repeating that. And, if you play a few games and you see some of the same similar schemes, and how we defend them are very similar, then the kids just get more reps, and naturally we're going to get a little bit better. But and to their credit, they stuck with it because we went through a tough schedule there, and we've come out on the other end, I think, a little hardened and a little tougher.
Noah, in terms of the coaching staff, you've got a head coach, you've got a defensive coordinator, you've also got a position coach. Who's your position coach?
My position coach is Max Silver.
And what is your relationship with him?
Me and Coach Silver have a really good relationship, and he's very good to me and very good to my family too, and I'm happy to have him.
Noah, I had a chance to talk to Mike on a number of occasions, and we were talking about the fact that Mike was the greatest defensive ball player I've ever seen at Eastern New Mexico University, and he said he had really good linebackers playing on either side of him that funneled a lot of plays his direction. So I would assume that you'd also give credit to your defensive teammates.
Oh, definitely, definitely. And we learned a lot from our seniors, and all of our 11 players on the field are always doing their part, and our coaching staff is great. I mean, every week in and week out, everything's scripted to a T, and we got to give props where it's due.
Mike, with your defensive crew, obviously you give them a pat on the back as they go out on the field, but then they're pretty much on their own. Who Who is the defensive coach on the field for you this year?
Well, I think that up front, Hayden Hill's really done a good job for us. Inside, Jamar Claiborne, who's a new face, has really just been steady for us. Of course, Brad does a good job at linebacker, and then Noah just continues to grow and get better every game and every week, and we're excited about that. But if all in all, if you boiled it down in our defensive scheme, our safeties are really the ones that get us into the right position and the right calls. And so they're probably the ones that are the most vocal out there just because of the nature of the position. But we've got some good leadership all together. It's really fun to watch it start coming together.
Speaking of fun to watch, we've got a highlight reel. We had people over there filming, and let's cue it up, and why don't you gentlemen walk us through it right now.
Well, I think, Coach Lee and I talked early in the week, I think Thursday or Friday, about taking the ball first and see if we could get on the scoreboard first, because the way their offense is set up, once they get behind, they're pretty conservative, and it worked out, and we took it right down the field, and the kids offensively did a good job.
And obviously, Kajan Martin, one of your newcomers, scoring a TD there.
Yes, sir.
We'll get some defensive highlights here in a minute. Oh, here we go, Noah. Just a good defensive package to get pressure. Mike, it just looked like your kids just wanted it more on Saturday night.
Oh, yeah. I think, again, credit to them. This was a nice play. This is a, that's a big-time call in a big game like this, to call something like that. But a credit to our kids. We challenged them during the week. We challenged our D linemen up front to really get after them, and they did a good job.
And Wyatt Strand, the elusive runner. He just looks effortless as he's going.
Yeah, he does a good, man, he does. That was Brad right there, getting a hand on the ball. And we thought he was going to come down with it. There's probably a reason they play linebacker. There's Noah making a play, coming through and stripping the ball, and that's something we preach to our kids all the time, the second, third guy there thinking turnover.
Yes, sir.
Looks like a happy group there, Mike.
That's the one of the best feelings around, and I've been fortunate enough to play in front of some or coach in front of some big crowds and some big stadiums, and you've been to some big stadiums, but it doesn't get any better than that at any level.
Well, Noah, in terms of making an adjustment to Eastern New Mexico University, a big selling point obviously was the football program itself, but you've got a pretty ambitious major. You're an electrical engineering major.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I am, and it's definitely difficult, but I'm excited for the payoff when I get through it.
And I read your bio, and you want to go off into the world and start your own company?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's the plan. I actually have a cousin that did that, so I'm trying to follow in his footsteps.
Very good. Mike, obviously you guys control your own destiny when it comes to the Lone Star Conference. You've got 2 games left against University of Texas Permian Basin, and you finish out the LSC season with Angelo State. And it's nice to be in that situation where you don't have to rely on somebody else to make things happen. Yeah,
we're essentially in the playoffs right now. As you say, we control our own destiny, and you can't worry about that. There's so many things out of our control. We can just take it one game at a time. And UTPB is a really talented team, and they play hard from start to finish. And it's going to be a huge challenge for us. And we got them at home, so that of course, that's a little bit of an advantage to us, but our kids are going to have to play every snap, just like you do in every Lone Star game.
No, when it comes to week-long preparation, I mean, you want consistency. So what's a week leading up to a game look like for Noah Schweitzer?
I mean, what's important is just consistently, like you said, doing everything the same way every single day, every week. And that's something the coaches preach, and I think that's something we're getting better at. And as you can see, it's starting to turn out in our favor with the wins.
From what I understand, even though this was a road game, it's a day trip.
Yes,
I mean, it's like being back in high school again.
Right.
But from what I understand, Coach Lee tried to keep it as much as like a normal away game would be, where you had a morning walkthrough, then you went over, and then you did your pregame.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And doing the same thing every single day is just so important, and it really does play a factor in coming out on Saturdays and being able to compete, And so Coach Lee and Coach Walton and all the coaches and the coaching staff do a very good job of making sure we're on the same page.
Coach Walton, our last night game at Greyhound Stadium will have one last game, which almost seems anticlimactic, but obviously in the great scheme of things could be important for postseason considerations. But what do you have to do well if you're going to beat the Falcons on Saturday?
Oh, I think number one is you've got to make them work. You know, and in every game that we've seen, they've had it's probably like most offenses, they've had some type of an explosive play. And, they're going to come out and try to throw the ball around. So we got to make them work down the field. They've got a freshman quarterback from Artesia who's a really good football player. So we got to put a little pressure on him and make him consistently work down the field. That's number one. Number two, I think that special teams-wise, we've got to obviously win that phase and dominate that phase and create some field position and long fields for them and obviously short fields for our offense. And offensively, if we can start fast again, I think it'll put a little bit of pressure on them.
Well, gentlemen, congratulations. I thought I died in heaven when I saw the final score and goose eggs up there for WT. So congratulations and best of luck against the Falcons.
Thank you.
All right, well, that is going to wrap up the interview segment of Sportslook. So what we'll do is we'll clear this out, and I'll finish up with an overtime right now. The 2018 World Series is underway, and it is a rematch between the Dodgers and the Red Sox. I'll forgive you if you don't remember the last time the Dodgers and the Red Sox played each other in the World Series, because that took place in 1916. Obviously, the Dodgers have gone through some changes since then. They were the Brooklyn Dodgers, so obviously they're not playing in the same ballpark. But how about the Red Sox? Fenway Park was constructed in 1912. So when the two lefties, David Price and Clayton Kershaw, went out and dueled each other, were they pitching from the same pitching rubber that Babe Ruth, yes, he was a pitcher for the Red Sox in 1916, had thrown from? No, it turns out the answer is not exactly. The Red Sox did play the regular season that year at Fenway, but for the World Series, they played at the other Major League Baseball park in Boston. And you're saying, Doc, there's only one Major League team in Boston. There is today, but back then, there were the Boston Braves, who now play in Atlanta. But they didn't move directly from Boston to Atlanta, but that's a story for another day. So that is going to wrap up our overtime, and that will wrap up an episode of Sportslook. I'd like to thank my guests. I'd like to thank Mike Walton and Noah Schweitzer from Greyhound Football. I'd like to thank John Friedel and Gabriel Perez, Ross Dalton from Greyhound Soccer. I'd like to thank Brandon and Ryan for the high school spotlight. Had Ms. Phoebe as my floor director tonight. So for those aforementioned people, this is Doc Elder saying, so long.